Vi lever I en verden med stadig voksende befolkning. Ifølge FN vil vi være 9,7 milliarder mennesker på jorden innen 2050. Hvordan skal vi sikre nok mat? Svaret ligger I havet. 70% av jordoverflaten dekket av hav. Samtidig kommer mindre enn 2% av maten vi spiser derfra. Det ligger et stort potensial I å utnytte havets ressurser bedre. Havet inneholder nemlig et mangfold arter som vi I liten grad utnytter I dag, spesielt lengre nede I næringskjeden. Men for å høste og utnytte disse behøves avansert teknologi. SFI Harvest skal utvikle nye metoder for å kunne ta I bruk flere av havets ressurser, og dermed løse disse globale utfordringene på en bærekraftig måte. Forskere skal sammen med fiskere, biomarin industri, teknologileverandører og interesseorganisasjoner dra nytte av Norge som ledende havnasjon til å utvikle en teknologi for bærekraftig høsting og foredling av underutnyttede arter på havets dyp. SFI Harvest vil I de kommende årene markere seg med fremragende teknologiinnovasjoner.
Welcome, oh, wow, to SFI Harvest Days 2021. My name is Cyclothon Special. I'm the host of a podcast called Smart Forklart. It's a Sintef podcast, and I'm going to guide you through these 2 next days. 2 days filled with good stuff, both for your stomach and your brains. When it comes to your stomach, with food and coffee, it is nice to know that the toilets, they are across the hall over there. If there's an emergency during these 2 days, we are very lucky. The exit is right there. You can see it with the green signs. And some of us have experienced an emergency earlier this morning. Yes, a couple of hours ago. Susa there, he was in the shower. Great start on your Norwegian travel. This event is filmed and is now streaming live to those of you who couldn't make it here. A warm welcome to you as well. All right. A lot of people are coming up to this stage to inspire you, and some in the audience here said it felt like being in a church when they arrived. We had to be silent. We couldn't do anything else but whisper. So I think we need to practice on the art of clapping our hands before we introduce people, because I want people to feel like rock stars when they arrive at stage. You probably know how to clap your hands, but it should be done with some effort, right? So if we just practice, I'm going to call Ingunn up on stage soon. If we just practice, when I say Ingunn Hormen, what do you do then? Yeah. It's close. We're not there yet. It's kind of embarrassing in the start, but we can practice one more time. Ingunn Hormen. Yeah. Good. Feel your body getting warm now. It's easier to talk to the person next to you. Yeah. Good. We have 1.5 hours before lunch, and in that time we will hear from 3 speakers on this stage. But first of all, let's hear a couple of words of wisdom from our big boss, the center director, Ingunn Hormen.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm so pleased to see all of you here in the same room in Trondheim, and not only your faces in 2D on a screen. We have gathered global experts on lower trophic and mesopelagic marine resources, world-leading technology manufacturers, fishing companies, producers of marine ingredients, interest organizations and fishing associations, regulatory authorities, and researchers. So please use these 2 days well, listen to the speakers, take notes, and ask questions. Use the breaks and the dinner tonight to get to know each other, tie new bonds for a collaboration in SFI Harvest during the next 7 years and beyond. Together, We will develop solutions and technologies to unlock the potential of lower trophic fisheries. We are SFI Harvest. Enjoy!
Hallelujah. Talking about church. Great, Ingunn, thank you. We have experts from all over the world for you. The first of them has come all the way from Spain and is probably a well-known name for many of you. He works as the scientific director for the ASTI Foundation and is also coordinator of the EU project Summer, among other things. It is an honor to welcome him up on stage. Please give it up for Dr. Xavier Irigoyen.
Thank you. It's an honor for me, really. Thanks for the invitation. It's okay? Yeah? Thanks for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be in Norway. It's always a pleasure. I really appreciate traveling this time. Usually I don't, or I didn't, but this time it was really nice to have my first travel in many years, in a couple of years. So I'm going to give you a brief overview around the mesopelagics, what brought us here, and what we are doing in summer and in other institutes in this subject. So the first question, this starts with a really silly question. How many fishes are there in the sea? I mean, we know that there is water under the poles of Mars, so we should know how many fishes are in the sea. And the answer is this, or we should know it to this level, but actually we don't. However, we did have some estimates up to 2014 of about 2,000 million tons based on modeling, basically. Most of it was based on modeling, on trophic levels modeling. And out of those 1,000 million tons were considered to be mesopelagic fishes. This is based on the use of scientific trawlers in a review by Goxaeter et al. So that was the state of the art in 2014. Then came a fellow Norwegian, Stein Carvet, that many of you must know, and did this really nice and fun experiment where he went with a boat, with a trawl, and then he comes back with a boat and acoustics, and he sees this nice gap in the mesopelagic acoustic layer. But the trawl was open, so he was not fishing. And basically, this means that the fishes were jumping away of this scientific trawl. And this was a really nice way to show that even if they are small, they have avoidance capabilities. All fishes have avoidance capabilities, and the mesopelagic fishes also. So basically what he said is that the 1,000 million tons estimate was probably wrong because they can escape these scientific trawls. And then we came to this paper that caused a lot of trouble by this guy, troublemaker, where we use acoustic data from all around the world in a cruise that was called Malaspina with this track. And this was the acoustic data from the track. And we tried to use those acoustic data to estimate what's a possible or likely biomass of mesopelagic fishes in the world. So this was data for the mesopelagic layer. And as you all know, scientific papers, they have a life on their own. In my opinion, this was the most important figure in the paper, but nobody paid attention to this figure ever. In this figure, what we do is a sensitivity analysis of those acoustic data. Because acoustic data by themselves, they mean nothing. You need to relate them to the biomass. And the acoustic data, in this sense, need to be related to the targeted strength, to the amount of sound that you are getting per kilogram of whatever is down there, producing an echo, and who is producing the echo. So basically, Here we have values in the literature of target strengths. And here we have the fish fraction of the acoustic biomass. This means this is no fish down there, 0. This is all the acoustics are coming from fish. In red is the 1,000 million tons, estimated with the pelagic or with the scientific trawls. So you find that to get the echo, we need quite extreme conditions, so really low target strengths, a lot of sounds per kilograms, and almost no fish down there. Almost all the echoes has to be coming from other organisms. And then we have all the range of other potential values. So what this paper was telling us is, first, we don't know how many the fish are there. Second, it's quite unlikely that it's only 1,000 million tons. And the most likely value is probably somewhere around here, because we know there are fishes down there, and because we know that the most usual values of target strength are around here. Who are the other potential echo producers? So this is fishes. The other ones are siphonophores, which is a jelly kind of organism that has a small bubble of air up here that also produces an acoustic signal like the swimming bladder of a fish, because there is a lot of difference between the water and the air there in density. So the acoustics, they ping very strongly in the acoustics. And this is the other popular guy on the open ocean. This is Cyclothon, that is known as the most abundant vertebrate in the planet. And is certainly the most abundant vertebrate in the planet. Whether there is 1,000 million tons or 10,000 million tons, this is very abundant all around the oceans. We'll come back to this one later. So from there, what it was clear is that we needed to improve our way of studying these organisms. Up to now, we are using acoustics. From the surface to the bottom, we can only use a few frequencies. We need to be able, if we want to have a proper estimate, and this is what we really need, we need to be able to get closer to them. One, to have a closer acoustic value, because then we can use different frequencies, and also to have a better way of knowing who is there. Why? Because if we are using trolls, and we know they are avoiding them, we are in a loop, basically. We are trying to calibrate our acoustics with whatever is in the troll, but we know that in the troll we don't have everything that is down there. So we need a list of who is down there. So in the projects that are now running, Summer, Meso, all the things that are doing in the United States, basically they are moving to in-situ acoustics. What is the advantage of the in-situ acoustics? So we are lowering, this is a similar WTA, we are lowering down to the mesopelagic layer, because then you can see the fishes or the organism, let's say organism, individually. Each of these points is an organism that is moving, and you can have a number of different frequencies that would not reach the place from the surface, but that you can use different frequencies to try to identify the type of organism based on the acoustic signature. Another thing we can do is to use environmental DNA. As you know, we all leave traces around us that we can use to fingerprint our DNA. If we were afterwards to go around the tables, we would know who was here, person by person. And it's the same. All organisms are leaving traces in the water that we can use. So basically, this is from the Bay of Biscay, where we are using environmental DNA to try to list who is there, and using water. So we are filtering water and then looking at the DNA. We have a lot of DNA from surface organisms, mainly anchovies, dominant population in the Bay of Biscay. And this is coming from the deep sea fish. We have anglerfish, we have Morolicus, we will speak about later, other things, and then a long list of other things that actually we almost never see in any trawl, because they are not abundant. They are small, and they are not so abundant that you catch them regularly, or that even if you catch them, you will not count them because they are at the end. They are the rare species. But all of them are there, and we can see them through environmental DNA. And actually, we are finding that we can do other things with environmental DNA that we were not sure it was possible, but it is that we can also study the behavior of these species. This is 3 of them, and based on the signal, the environmental DNA signal at day and night, we can differentiate the ones that are doing vertical migrations. So this is the environmental DNA signal at night, and this is during the day. And again, we have another one, and then see the ones that are not doing any vertical migration. So in a way, we are able to have patterns of behaviors or patterns of distribution. You have to be careful. We also have a lot of anchovy DNA down there, and we can perhaps study the transport of carbon by different organisms and use this. But when you look at the difference and relative differences, you can see these kind of patterns of fishes that are moving up and down just based on their signal in the water, the signal that they are living in the water. So this is basically what we are doing in terms of trying to improve the estimate of the biomass. One, using in-situ acoustics to have a better identification, and then to use eDNA to have a list of who is there. Then we come to the question that is based, I guess, is basic for SFI Harvest. Should we fish or should we not? So what happens if we don't fish? We have regulating services, a lot of carbon transport with these organisms that are migrating up and down every day. They are eating in the surface and going down to the deep layers. They are also providing some functioning services. They are food for other commercial species. They are food for tunas. They are food for mammals. They are food for squids. They are food for many organisms. They provide cultural services, and they have a value by themselves because nature has a value by itself for being there. And they will lose in the provisioning. If we fish, we lose on the regulation, we lose on the functioning, and we get more into the provisioning as fish meal, fish oil, and other things. So basically, the point is that we are trying to have what we call an option value, to know what we gain or what we lose if we fish something. Or an option value is what we gain or what we lose if we take a decision to do something that when you cannot go back. So what we are doing is using an ecosystem path model of in this case, of the Bay of Biscay ecosystem to see what happens when you fish or don't fish a ton of mesopelagic organisms. Don't pay too much attention on this because the most important thing is coming later is the uncertainty. But basically what happens is this is the results of ecosystem ecopath model where what happens when we don't fish 1 ton of mesopelagic fishes. What we have is more predators of those mesopelagic fishes, and we have less competitors of those mesopelagic fishes. This is normal trophic chain. If you take something out where the predator loses, or those things have a commercial value that you can estimate. They have a recreational value. They have a value by themselves. So you can try to go and estimate what we are losing in terms of carbon transport, what we are gaining in terms of commercial value, what we are gaining in terms of provision of fish meal or fish oil. And you can come up with an option value. What is the problem to do that at the moment? That the uncertainty in most of the parameters is huge. is really, really large. So it's very difficult to come up with a real estimate that could help to make such a decision. And this is basically what you see here. The uncertainty is huge. So basically what we are finding out is what is called the quasi-option is even more important. The value, the most important value now is on the research, because if somebody has to take the decision, the research is going to provide the information, and we still need that information. The information is really valuable at this stage before taking the option value. So all the information we can gather about the mesopelagic ecosystem has a lot of value because a decision needs to be taken later on. And even without going there so far, there are some kind of common sense considerations, basic things that we should remember, because when you say there is lots of fishes in the sea, people get crazy. They think they are jumping out of the sea. Sorry, that shouldn't be. Well, why there is so many mesopelagic fishes? Because the ocean is really large. This is the estimate by Coxaeter. And I don't know, any point here, around here, 0.5 grams per square meter. Well, maybe it's 0.5, maybe it's 5. We can have that discussion, one order of magnitude. But it's 5 in 1,000 meters of water depth. In the open ocean, the concentration is low. In the open ocean, the concentration of mesopelagic fishes, being 1 gram or 10 grams, the concentration is low. Second is which fish? I mean, as I said before, this is Cyclothon, the most abundant vertebrate in the planet. Well, it sounds really, really impactful and important to be the most abundant vertebrate. It's the most abundant vertebrate. It lives in the open ocean. It's really an open ocean species. Doesn't migrate, stays all the time in the deep water. This is how it looks like when you fish it. So it's really not a very attractive thing if you are going to fish this at 500 or 600 meters depth in the open ocean. The cost just of trawling to capture this is huge. So this is something that you have to take into consideration, that fishing in the open ocean, in the deep layers, these really tiny things is probably not profitable. Well, it's not probably, it's not profitable. Oh, sorry. Well, there is something missing here, basically. However, I wanted to say that I have a couple of slides. There are other things, other species, not mesopelagic fishes in general, not mesopelagic organisms in general. There are species that might be interesting. We are considering in the Bay of Biscay Maurolicus muelleri as a species of interest. Why? Because it's not so deep, it's migrating, it concentrates, it's pretty close of our coast, so it's a potential interest there. It's still in the edge of being profitable, and we are still seen that there is many difficulties to fish it, and the price is not high enough to be profitable at the moment. But it's a possibility in that sense. And then there are other species, because when we do these discussions, when we talk about that, we always mention, well, there is no mesopelagic fisheries in the planet. Yes, there is mesopelagic fisheries in the planet, actually. This thing is a mesopelagic organism. It lives between 100 and 500 meters. And there is catches around 1 million tons a year of Dosidicus gigas. This is the Humboldt giant squid. So there are already some mesopelagic fisheries, but there are mesopelagic fisheries of things that are large and expensive and profitable. So we have still a lot of things to work out before going ahead on other things. Thank you.
Hello everyone back at home. Okay, from one of the brightest minds in Spain, we got one of the brightest minds of Portugal waiting to present for us. Professor João Sousa is located on a daily basis at the University of Porto and holds a PhD in electrical engineering. If I was to give you all his records and skills according to Google, it would take us until lunch, so I'll just do it the easy way and give the word to you, Dr. Sousa. Just press the next one.
Okay, so thanks very much. First of all, I start by thanking you for inviting me to be here. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here, and it's my first international trip in a long, long time. So one additional reason to be quite happy to be here. Just notice that the slides, let me just check. Okay, I think that there was an issue with, because this isn't in a wide format and the slides are not in this format, so please, okay, this should be okay, right? The slides will look a bit funky, but still. Okay, so, and yes, I was in the shower when the alarm went off, and then the next question was, and they were very explicit, please, go out immediately. So then I thought it was too cold outside, so anyway, so now I'll be talking about maritime robotic systems for underwater surveillance and mapping. And what you see here is part of the motivation for our developments. So this is continental Portugal. We have these islands here, the Madeira Islands, and we also have the, okay, I'll say it in Portuguese, Açores Islands here. And then this white line represents our claim to the extension of the continental shelf. And the question then is, what about a sustained presence here? And you see, so this is an outline of my presentation. So I'll start by briefly describing what we do in our lab. Then I'll state our vision for a sustained presence in the ocean, assets. I'll talk about software, and then I'll talk about some of the experiments that we did in these cruise, and also in this exercise and future developments. Another important thing is I've been coming to Trondheim for a long time now. I've been working a lot with Asger and Martin, so thanks very much. It's been a great cooperation. And this is an old picture. So in terms of the lab overview, so now we have more people and more toys, but still, I'm lazy, so this has been here for a long time. So basically, we've been designing, building, and deploying autonomous underwater, surface, and air vehicles for networked operations. And we've also been designing and deploying the software that allows all of these systems to work together as teams. Applications include marine biology, oceanography, security, and defense. And this is our vision for a sustained presence in the ocean. So, of course, pretty much like Norway, you need lots of assets in the ocean. But there's more to it, because you need lots of interactions. For example, interoperated communication links above water and underwater, sensing links, for example, in acoustic tomography, mixed initiative interactions, meaning operators in the planning and control loops. Vehicles will come and go because we are interested in persistent operations. Same thing with the operators. There is an important issue, which is the issue of scalability. Right now, we have a good handle on how to operate, let's say, 10, 15 assets at a time. What about 100? What about 1,000? We still don't know how to do that. We've also been using, and this is quite common, vehicles as data mules to carry data from one location to another location when you don't have direct connectivity. There's also the issue of distributed computation, and a related topic which is also very relevant for the type of operations that we are talking about is the issue of being able to have autonomous launch and recovery of other assets. And so basically in our vision, we would like to treat this ensemble of assets as a system that has properties that are a function of the vehicles, a function of the communication networks, and a function of the interactions that you establish over these. So you would like to have, we would like to have this ensemble to have a sort of organization-like properties. So basically issuing a command such as go and find this front, go and map this front. So without worrying, okay, about saying, hey, you have to do this, you have to do that. So, and this is not PowerPoint engineering. So we are getting there one step at a time. First of all, assets. So we have lots of toys. Most of them were designed and built there, such as the LAUV and other assets, and kind of more recent and a bit exotic assets, such as this is an otter from Maritime Robotics, and this is a sampler for the surface micro layer. So this is a prototype, but it has been working very well. Another exotic toy is this is an Octocopter that can basically take off and land from water. And by doing this, you can either collect water samples or you can mount an acoustic modem here for this guy to communicate with submerged AUVs. We also developed different types of drifters for coastal and ocean operations. We have, actually in one project, we have hundreds of these. And following the example of NTNU, we also got Autonaut for long endurance missions. All of these guys share the same software or use the same software, and they share some of the same hardware. This is our workhorse. It has been around for some time now, basically two versions, upper water column, endurance in the order of 50 hours plus. We hope to reach something like 100 hours by next year, and also mapping version. And so right now we have something like 70 of these worldwide, because these have been commercialized by OceanScan. There was an animation, but it's not working. It's fine. And then something that is fundamental to achieve what we do, and an important observation here, because if you buy, typically if you buy commercially off-the-shelf vehicles, you buy one vehicle from this company, you buy another vehicle from this company, and then you want to interoperate these guys, and that is not, typically that is not feasible. And this is one of the reasons why we've been developing this software. So we have Juno running on board. Then we have IMC, which is our message-based protocol for communications. So all vehicles in our network and all control stations talk IMC. And then you have NAPTIS, which is basically the interface. We also have, this has been around for a long time now, in some of our vehicles, T-Rex, which is a deliberative planner, meaning that, and without going into details, so T-Rex will generate new plans on board when a new objective is received from the operator, or when there's an error in execution. Something else that we did, so we went one step further in 2015. Then again, this was done in cooperation with NTNU. So we had several AUVs in the water. This took place in the Azores. We had the UAVs. And all of these guys were running T-Rex. And then on the ship, we also had another planner, Europtus, that was generating high-level objectives that were sent to the vehicles, either by acoustic communications or by SATCOMs or Wi-Fi. So to, basically to coordinate their operations. In terms of, this is also something fundamental for us, let's say, to learn from experience. We've been operating a lot in lots of different places. So we've been organizing large-scale exercises. We have deployments from shore, from submarines, and also from other ships. Over 100 days of operations per year, except in 2020. Some figures from 2019. And now I'll switch gears and I'll talk about something somewhat different, because I want to highlight a few experiments that we did here. So this was about this SOI cruise. So this took place on board the RV Falcor from the Schmidt Ocean Institute. So this was funded by the Schmidt Ocean Institute. This was my teams, we had people from Port University, from NTNU, from Harvard University, from the University of Rhode Island, and from the University Polytechnic of Cartagena. And then we had collaborators, for example, from SINTEF, from NASA Ames, from MBARI, and from the Portuguese Navy. Without going into details, the goal of this cruise was to demonstrate a novel approach to observe the ocean with coordinated multi-domain vehicles. And so this is what we had in place. So we had several UAVs, some of them were VTOLs. We had one wave glider, 2 sail drones, and lots of AUVs, one AUV from, then again, NTNU. And in terms of the software, in addition to what I've told you about, Dune, IMC, and Neptus, and to basically make sure that we could coordinate operations from the ship and also from Portugal, we developed Ripples, which is basically a communications hub for data dissemination, situation awareness, and supervision. And so then we had a web-based mission control center. So we could operate from Porto. This is a kind of a snapshot of some of the views that we had. And the same thing on the Falcor, so that we could basically coordinate operations. And basically, we were operating non-stop. We operated non-stop for 2 weeks in 4 shifts, 2 people per shift. Okay, operating multiple assets, but just 2 people per shift, except for air operations. Then again, without going into details, there are lots of interesting stuff going on. Something that we did was a mesoscale mapping, so 50 nautical miles by 40 nautical miles with unprecedented sub-mesoscale resolution using multiple AUVs. I don't have time to go into details, but in the background, you see SST data. Red means kind of a higher temperature. And then these tracks are AUV tracks color-coded by salinity. There's more to it, but I won't have time to go over that. And there's an interesting correlation, and correlation is, and then there's a shift because of, there's a time shift. But anyway, this went very well, and we were fortunate enough to see this filament that was detaching from the front. And here, we measured currents of up to 2 knots, which in the middle of the ocean is a lot. I forgot to mention that we went after the Northern Pacific subtropical front, which is a place in which Arctic waters meet the kind of warm waters from south, and it worked very well. Few examples of what we did, just a few. So we had a sort of automated front tracking algorithms implemented in our AUVs. We also had, and this was also very interesting, high-resolution data sampling using biochemical sensors coordinated with Falcor and UAVs. So we had those guys moving information and taking measurements in a synoptic way. So AUVs, Falcor, and UAVs flying over the Falcor. I should also mention, I don't have slides about this, we also use a prototype from NASA Ames to measure concentrations of DMS gas in the air. And now a few words that I kind of summarize some of the stuff that we did.
So we take all these different systems that go beyond the footprint of what a ship can do. They can be 20 miles this way, 20 miles that way, and help us understand the oceans a lot better than we do now.
Hello? Yeah, and I think that this was a kind of a good summary of what we did, having a kind of a big footprint in terms of operation. Now let me switch gears and talk briefly about this exercise that we've been organizing in cooperation with the Portuguese Navy since 2010, more recently in cooperation with CMRE and with NATO Maritime Unmanned Systems Initiative. It's called Robotic Experimentation and Prototyping, augmented by Unmanned Maritime Systems. And the exercise is about large-scale experimentation, and it's about evaluation and testing in operational environments. An interesting thing is an invitation-only exercise, and we get people from the industry, from academia, and from the armed forces. And these are some of the focus areas. So we have lots of toys to play with, including, for example, this submarine, a U-214 type submarine. So some pictures and some figures from 2021. So we had over 1,000 people 17 navies, and lots of other interesting stuff. So this was the OP area south of Lisbon, and to give you sort of a flavor for dimensions, here this is basically 70 kilometers, and this was the OP area. In terms of assets, from the Portuguese Navy, we had all of these assets. I mentioned the submarine, and we also had other assets, so other ships, for example, from the US, from Germany, from the Netherlands, and from NATO. So we had 17 unmanned vehicles, 9 surface vehicles, 29 UUVs, 7 warships, and 5 support vessels. We also had, this was one of the bases from which we deployed, so we had a combined maritime operations center. This looks small, but it's pretty big, so 3 stories high, and we could operate from here. At the time, this was full. And now, just a few words about some experiments that we did in this exercise. There was an animation here that for some reason it's not working. Okay, it doesn't matter. So in this exercise in 2015, then again, we had our colleagues from Norway in this exercise from NTNU. So we went chasing whales. Basically, the idea was to see where whales were moving and then collect environmental data close to the whales. And so we did this with multiple UAVs and multiple AUVs and the ship. Another example that is also very relevant to some of the things that we were discussing here, this was somewhat complex. Let me just try to describe it in a few words. So this took place in 2019. Multiple AUVs from us and from the Naval Undersea Warfare Center. One ASV from the Naval Undersea Warfare Center, from the University of Hawaii. What we called our flying modem, which is an octocopter capable of takeoff and landing, a seabed node, control station, and then the operator was able to send commands and also mission plans to the MV that had a communications gateway that could also send those commands over acoustic communications to the vehicles, or the operator could do exactly the same thing, sending commands and mission data to the flying modem that would land close to the seabed node. Then mission plans were stored here, and AUVs would go by the seabed node and got new mission plans. Something else that we did in 2019 was, so there's this estuary, and you have strong tidal currents here. We had a high-res model of currents here, so 10 minutes, 50 meters, and over 5 million grid points for a 12-hour horizon. And the question was, so we were supposed to go into this target, and we were supposed to deploy our AUV somewhere here. And the question is, when and where should you do it? So we had an approach based on dynamic programming that could answer these questions. And it's a global approach. I don't have time to go over details, but what you see here is an example of one run. So we got the optimal trajectory from this approach, and then we ran a full mission with an AUV, 13 kilometers, 3 hours, velocity gain 28%, and the difference between the predicted time of arrival and the optimal one was 2 minutes. Let me just say, I think I still have, I was told that I could go up to 20 minutes. Okay, so something very interesting about this approach. Without going into details, this approach also gives you very important observations about mission planning. The first one is if you select a target, and if you say, I want to get here by 10:55, then this approach also gives you these lines. For example, this line here will tell you that if you depart from any point in this line, it will take you 2 hours to reach this point. no matter where you depart from, if you do a kind of an optimal trajectory. If you depart from this line here, it will take you, for example, 3 hours. So this means that in terms of mission planning, this is very interesting if you want to go about rendezvous. So you can deploy one vehicle here, they will take 2 hours to get there, and if you deploy one vehicle here, 1 hour before this one, they'll get there at the same time. So this is very interesting for mission planning, especially in areas in which you have strong currents. The other interesting observation is that by using exactly the same tool and taking time into consideration, you could say that from all of this region, if I depart from this area here, I'll take more advantage of the currents. And this is what you'll gain out of that, but just by departing from here. And now, future developments. So recently we got funded to start what we called, I don't know if this is the right title, but if you have a better one, please let me know, Center for Atlantic Operations. And basically this will be a 24/7 command and control center, multiple assets for sure, and we want to have a network model for cooperation and integration, and we want to address Atlantic challenges in terms of understanding of what is going on in the Atlantic. We were also funded to expand our fleet, so in addition to all of our assets, we'll get an additional autonaut, several ocean gliders, long-range UAVs, and also long-range AUVs. Now, kind of 30 seconds per project. So right now we have 6 H2020 projects going on, but I'll just talk about 2 new projects that were awarded recently. The first one is Juno, Robotic Exploration of Atlantic Waters. And so one of our collaborators, Renato Mendes, got this award, the Luso American Foundation Atlantic Award. And the idea is to use the autonaut to go from Porto to the Açores, okay, I'll say it in Portuguese, Açores Islands, and along the way stay away from trouble, meaning bad ocean conditions, and at the same time maximizing the return, the scientific return, so by looking at fronts, internal waves, and eddies. So right now we are kind of studying and looking at historical data to basically figure out how to plan our mission to maximize the scientific return. Another example that was also awarded recently, so we got these, so we won this PT Space AI Moonshot Challenge. These are the partners. So from Portugal, IST, University of Aveiro, Hydrographic Institute, and MIT Portugal. And without going into lots of details, this is called SMART, and 4 work packages. The first one is about floating plastic debris identification. The second one is about high-resolution ocean numeric model. The third one is about physics-guided spatial temporal mapping of occurrence probability. And then the fourth one is about in-situ validation. And finally, vision and what we would like to achieve. Then again, we are facing the ocean pretty much like Norway, and I think that we are facing similar challenges. So we would really like to go towards a sustained presence in the Atlantic Ocean. So right now we have been operating here, 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 and there. In about 1 or 2 years, we would like to go further in these kind of wide areas. And 2 to 3 years in the future, we would like to be able to operate here. And then again, after that, okay, God knows what. And we want to do this in a sort of a cooperative framework. So we've been discussing with colleagues, for example, from POCAN and from University of Açores, University of Madeira. So we've been discussing the idea of connecting these labs so that we can think about missions taking place, let's say, in this area, and at the same time taking advantage of the presence of the Portuguese Navy if there's a need to rescue any asset here. So the observation is that if you operate in these areas and if you're careful, no point is, I think something like, in any of these points, the closest point on shore, it's about 500 miles. So meaning that getting there, it's not easy, but it's not infeasible. So if you coordinate operations in a nice way, you can also think about having rescue vessels to assist with operations. And this is pretty much what I had to say, so thank you very much.
Wow. You want some of this? Susa? Yeah.
Oh, I thought this was water.
Great. Very interesting. Thank you. Any questions for Dr. Susa here? All the way from Portugal? Yes. Great. I have to bring your microphone for the viewers back home.
Yeah.
There you go.
I was about to drink this. So.
Don't do it. Don't
That
do
will
it.
be later. So, yes, I'm on. This was very interesting, and of course, also with Irigoyen's presentation in mind. Can you equip your, you called it toys?
Yeah.
So I'll use that expression. Can you equip them with any kind of sensors?
I think for the sensors, and NTNU has been facing the similar challenge. The question is about size and power consumption. So if, let's say, size is decent, and by decent I mean small, and power consumption is not big, then because we've been, let's say, developing these basically from scratch, it's easy to add other sensors to those, as far as they basically are small and power consumption is not exceptional.
So the different applications so far, I saw that you have the military on board, so I guess it might be something secret here?
No,
No.
no, I don't do I don't do classified work. So, and basically something very important about this exercise is that we have people from the armed forces, people from industry and academia working together in this open environment. Basically, the idea is to speed up the development process, and of course, everybody will benefit from that.
I will take it.
Hello. Thank you. Very interesting presentation from you and the previous. My question is, with all this new equipment and the map that was shown earlier of how much of this mesopelagic fish is around the world, do you think that in the next 8 years, from 2014 until now, we know this much. In the next 8 years, with all this equipment, will the knowledge be much quicker? Will we know more quicker in the coming years than we have done from 2014 until now, as regarding mesopelagic?
Actually, that's a very good question, and I go back in it. So I'm also part of this NATO advisory board to the MUS initiative, and people have been excited about, let's say, this phrase from, this is in a book from the 90s, and it's by this guy, Kurzweil, and the guy talks about this age of exponentials. And yes, we think that in the next few years, change will change faster. Because I have to be very precise, in 2010, when we started this exercise with the Portuguese Navy, there were just a few people. We would put AUVs in the water, and if you were religious, you would pray. So to make sure that those would come back. Now we achieved this level of reliability, same thing with NTNU, that basically you can say, hey, now we can do interesting things, and now we also learn from experience, and we can be much more ambitious. And then again, going back to this age of exponentials, I see that not only in terms of the number of assets that we use, but also, and this is why I was alluding to this networking effect, because one thing is to have, let's say, to go from 10 assets to 100 assets. The other thing is the type of interactions that you establish over this. And so it grows, it can grow really exponentially, because if these guys start working in a given manner, lots of different interactions, then what you can achieve, it's a lot. So I really expect, let's say in the next 8 to 10 years, for us to witness a huge change in the way we have been observing the ocean. Very good, very good question.
Thank you. It was a very nice presentation. One question from me is, you're gathering a lot of data, and so is other universities. Is there any programs on how to share all this data somehow ongoing at the moment? And one last question is, which I see as a need for having some system for rescuing units that is in danger. You should probably be more than having your navy. That could be an international sort of not rescue system, but at least identification system, so you could, passing vessel could pick them up for your university, other universities, if they're getting into a problem. That's I guess is lacking at the moment.
Yes, then again, very good questions. So starting with the data, for example, for our SOI crews, we were required by the Schmidt Ocean Institute to make the data available on this public repository run by, I think it was PM, okay, I don't remember and we've also been having discussions with other initiatives in Europe. So for example, EMODAT and CDataNet, if I get it right. So to make sure that we know how to transition data to these repositories, and at the same time take care of quality control and all of these issues to make sure that data is useful. Talking about rescue, that is very important, and this is the reason why I was alluding to this. I mentioned the Portuguese Navy, but we've also been be engaging, for example, shipping companies that go from Portugal to continental Portugal to the Açores or so, and also fishing vessels. We have a very nice cooperation with the Portuguese Navy, and just to give you a sense of how good this cooperation is. A few years ago, there was this ASV from a US company. I don't want to go into details. The CEO emailed me saying, hey, we have this ASV in trouble. The thing was approximately 400 nautical miles west of the Azores, and they said, hey, can you help? So I called these guys from the Portuguese Navy, and they said, yeah, we can go there because there was a corvette in the area, and we can go there and rescue them. So, but you're right. I think this is essential for kind of long endurance operations. Of course, let's say especially for Norway, operations in the Arctic are even more challenging. But here, I think that we can rely on that type of networking for assistance, because this is crucial for long endurance operations. So, thank you very much.
More questions? No? We're good. You had a chance to talk to Joao in the break or in the lunch. Anytime you're available?
Yeah, I'll be here.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
A round of applause. From Portugal, we now head over for knowledge from Iceland. Feels a bit like Eurovision here, from one country to the other. Stefan Thor Eysteinsson holds a PhD in food science from the University of Iceland, which is a perfect PhD now as we are closing in on lunch. The last speaker right before lunchtime, probably good in other ways too, that PhD, I guess. He is a project manager at Matisse. Yes, in his home country, Dr. Stefan. The stage is yours.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. Like Joel and Xavier, it's been quite a while since I traveled internationally. It's actually my first time in Norway, so I'm very glad to be here. So from robotics, I'll be giving you a history lesson of sorts on the Icelandic lower trophic and mesopelagic fisheries. So just a brief overview of what I'll be talking to you about. Most of the work that has actually been done in Iceland has been on the pearl side, so I'll be spending most of my time talking about that. I'll also touch briefly on calanus, even though there hasn't been a lot of work done there. It's an interesting biomass. And then I will talk a little bit about the krill and the work that's been done there. So if we start with the pearl side, so back in 2001, the Marine and Research Institute in Iceland, observed a rather large biomass along the Reykjanes Ridge. And this piqued the interest of the industry. So in 2002, 4 cruises with 2 pelagic trawlers were organized by the industry in collaboration with the researchers at the Marine and Research Institute. And they provided their expertise with the acoustics. And then there was also a fishing gear company that was involved in this in trying to help them catch the fish, essentially. So it wasn't quite as successful as they had hoped. They observed rather low catch rates, less than or about 200 kilograms per hour. These cruises are obviously quite expensive, so this was kind of a letdown. Most of what they actually found in the trawls were krill, jellyfish, and then some other mesopelagic species. So this kind of extinguished the interest in this biomass that had been observed. However, back in 2006, there was a decline in the amount of capelin. So the capelin quota was essentially reduced, and this kind of renewed the interest from the industry. So the Marine and Research Institute in Iceland went out for a single survey. They observed the same area as previously done. However, the results were quite similar. Total of 4 hauls, very low catch rates. It was mostly krill, jelly, and other mesopelagic fish. So not quite as successful as they had hoped. So this kind of, again, extinguished the idea of going out and fishing. So back in 2008 and 9, again, capelin quota reduced, and the industry was again interested in catching mesopelagic fish. So they went out to this area. Initially, they had 17 ships licensed for these experimental fisheries. And they went out to the Reykjanes Ridge and actually quite successfully caught pearlside. The overall catching was, here we go, yeah. So in the beginning, the catching was actually quite successful. There was a fairly steep learning curve on how to catch the fish. And it was predominantly pearlside that was being caught. It was fairly clean catches of pearlside. They were, the companies that went out there were seeing hauls of over 300 tons per catch. And as you can see, in 2009, they caught over 46,000 tons of pearlside, so fairly successful. However, in 2010, it wasn't quite as successful. They were having a lot more difficulty in catching the fish, both in finding it and actually when they found it, then catching it. And then in 2011, it kind of petered off, and they pretty much abandoned the fishery. They were actually having a lot of success in targeting pure pearlside catches, so bycatch wasn't really an issue for them, as has often been the case in these kind of fisheries. But they were actually having a lot of processing woes that had to do with the size of the pearlside. So the pearlside is obviously a very, very small fish. When they brought the fish into the tanks, the RSW tanks, it would absorb a lot of the salt from the ocean that was kept from the sea that was kept in, and you would have a very salty fish going into fish meal processing. So you would end up with a product that was very salty, essentially, very salty fish meal, which made it very difficult to sell. So there were some companies that tried to solve this by using fresh water or ice slurry. This did have some success. Obviously, it was a little bit more expensive, a little bit more complicated, but they did have some success. But these experiments were kind of terminated back in 2011 when they lost interest in the fishery. Also, one of the big reasons for why they lost interest in the fishery is that the capelin was back, so they didn't have to go and catch some pearlside. So the processing valves actually kickstarted a few projects that we worked on within Matis on what else could we do with the pearlside. We actually made, it was semi-successful, where we made pet food out of pearlside. We also attempted to make some surimi from the pearlside with absolutely no success whatsoever. But we were able to, using pH shift, we were able to hydrolyze the protein portion of the pearlside, and we actually ended up making a rather nice product, a hydrolyzed product from the pearlside. But with the lack of interest from the industry, none of this has actually been continued, essentially. So in the midst of the experimental fishery, the Marine and Research Institute in Iceland went out in 2010. They had a single winter survey where they were going to estimate the biomass, and they observed, the survey went out to the south here and into the west, and they in the west they observed smaller pearlside fishes, pearlside here, whereas in the south, where they had the majority of the pearlside, those encountered there were larger. And the biomass estimation was about 250,000 tons of pearlside in this area, and they estimated a total allowable catch of around 30,000 tons. But again, as I mentioned, this fishery was then essentially abandoned. So, back in 2016, capelin again reduced. So interest from the industry. So 3 commercial vessels went out for 7 days. They went out to familiar fishing grounds. These fishing ships were actually probably the ones that had the most experience in catching pearlside. So these are very experienced fishermen. However, they had very low catch rates, resulting in them just taking a few hauls. They didn't seem to find a lot of the pearlside, and actually the majority of the catches was again jelly, krill, and a lot of lanternfish, and not a lot of pearlside. So this kind of extinguished the interest again. Back in 2019, 2020, so last year, almost no capelin was caught, so this again reignited the interest in pearlside, but nothing really materialized. However, there seems to be growing interest now in the pearlside fishery in Iceland, so we'll see where that goes. So that was just a little bit about the pearlside. And I just want to briefly touch on the Calanus. So in Iceland we have the 2 main species. We have Calanus finmarchicus and we have Calanus hyperboreus. We sometimes observe Calanus glacialis, but it's definitely not one of the main species that we have. So its distribution, so there's a little bit of overlap. We find Calanus finmarchicus all around Iceland, essentially, whereas Calanus hyperboreus is mostly observed here in the north and the northeast. Calanus hyperboreus pretty much dominates the Langanes Östur and the Langanes Norðaustur transects. So there is some overlap there. Now, in terms of biomass and what makes Calanus interesting in Iceland is that the estimated standing biomass, the standing stock, is around 7 million tons, with the estimated biomass production per year being somewhere in the range of 40 to 40 million tons. So that's a very large biomass. It's not quite as large as you have in the Norwegian Sea, obviously, but it is still fairly large and something that could potentially be harvested. So there hasn't exactly been a lot done with regards to harvesting the Calanus in Iceland. There's definitely some interest now, and in the recent years, companies in Iceland have shown increased interest in utilizing this resource, but so far nothing has been done in this regards. So this brings us to the krill. So in Iceland we have the 4 main species. We have Megaronyctophanes norvegica, or the northern krill. We have Tisanoessa raski, enormis, and then the Longi caudata. So those are the four main ones. The two most abundant ones are the northern krill, so this one, and then the enormis. And geographically speaking, they have a different distribution, essentially. So we have the northern krill mostly here on the south and the west of Iceland, but we have the enormis more in the north and here in the east of Iceland. In terms of biomass, the standing stock is thought to be somewhere around 5 million tons. So again, it's a fairly large biomass that we're talking about. And unlike the colonists, there have actually been several attempts to commercially exploit the krill. And all of them have been performed in Ísafjarðardjúp, which is a fjord in the west of Iceland. Some of you might be familiar with it. It started out in 2013. These were very small trials where they were just estimating the feasibility of can this be caught essentially here. Very small trials, tens, maybe hundreds of kilos at the maximum over a long period of time. The main krill species that they observed here was the Raski. However, in 2018, another company showed interest in the krill fishery. I believe it was a Norwegian ship that came in with Norwegian technology. And it was two trials carried out. There was a summer trial and an autumn trial. The summer one was less successful with regards to the amount of krill that was caught. They were actually using an experimental catching technique. So they were actually using light to attract the krill, which was then pumped ashore and then processed on board. For the summer trial, I think they caught around 4.6 tons, and the autumn trials resulted in about 13 tons. So these are obviously not very large numbers. Yes. Again, the krill species mostly encountered was the Raski. Bycatch wasn't an issue, especially in the summer. Almost no bycatch. A little bit of bycatch in the autumn trials, but nothing that they seemed to worry about. So this was. I know the products that they produced from this were quite good. The quality of them was good, but the quantity wasn't as they would have liked. So this trial has essentially been ended. There is still one active experimental license in Ísafjarðardjúp, and there is interest in ramping up the catching or the fishing of krill in Ísafjarðardjúp, but this is something that is still just a discussion, and we'll see where this goes. So this was just a very brief overview of the fisheries, the mesopelagic and lobotrophic fisheries in Iceland. And if you have any questions, I will do my best to answer them. Thank you.
Any questions for a man who is visiting Norway for the first time? Make him feel welcome now. Make him. Any questions at all, Ingunn? Yeah. First one out, always.
How do you like it here? No. Thank you very much. Very interesting. As I understood that when it comes to the mesopelagic species, there is currently no activity going on?
Well, with regards to the pearl side, at least, no. I don't know if some of you might know that the capelin is back in full force. So when the capelin fishery is active, it seems to kind of dull any interest in the pearl side. And this is mostly because of the overlap of the timing of the fishing. Yeah. So currently, nothing really active. There are obviously the big projects, Summer and Meso, that are estimating these biomasses. But with regards to the fisheries, nothing currently. But there is still interest within the industry in Iceland to do something. Obviously, they've amassed a lot of experience with the pro side in the Reykjanes Ridge, so there's definitely interest there.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for very nice presentation. And you show a little bit with your processing mesopelagic fish. Do you have experience of processing krill and calanus? Preserving and processing, actually.
Say it again?
Processing and preservation.
Oh, so we do have some. You mean at Matis then, or yes?
In general, in Iceland.
Yes. So actually, this company here. So this was bringing in a lot of the Norwegian experience to help with the processing of the krill. So there isn't a lot of experience in the actual harvesting and the preservation. So there is some knowledge, but there's not a lot of experience in the actual processing. Mostly what has been done in the labs, and one of the steps that this company here is doing, Gunvor, is that they're trying to gain more experience in before wrapping up the actual fishery. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. Or yeah.
Anyone else? Nah. All right. Thank you, Stefan.
Thank you.
Just leave this here? Yeah, just leave it there. Great.
This way.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you, all three of you, for giving us a great start on this SFI Harvest days. Anyone hungry out there after hearing about fish and food and stuff? Maybe not the Icelandic version of what did you call that thing that didn't succeed at all?
The pearl side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't go for that in the lunch. It is time for lunch. It is served in 10 minutes time. Just go past the reception, go to the waiters. They will guide you to your table. Just show them that you are from SFI Harvest. Pick up, if you haven't taken your card yet, just pick it up right next to the door. It is a nice way to see who you can talk to, who is interested in the same stuff as you. You have the chance to talk to concrete people and building people if you would like to, but try to talk to SFI Harvest people if you could. As Ingunn said, this is a great opportunity to do some networking. The lunch is said to be very nice. It's a buffet, and according to the program, we will start again at 12:30. So please be back here in 1 hour and 10 minutes, right? Yeah. Enjoy your lunch. All right. Welcome back from lunch. Sorry to speak about this for all of you watching at home, but that was amazing. A buffet. Some of us have complained that it was too much food. Well, it's a difficult life here at this seminar. This time, it's sorry, my microphone is struggling again. This time it's time for more food for your brain, we can say. There are some speakers that will appear on this stage in the next hour. The first one out is working as an advisor at the Bologna Foundation. She holds a master's degree in marine biology from the University in Bergen, where she also has experience from seaweed-related projects and teaching. In the Bologna Foundation, she is part of the Aquaculture team, where she, among other things, works to develop opportunities for farming seaweed and other low-trophic species. And the fish feed initiative Råvareløftet, which she is here to present today. Give her a warm welcome, Mari Wold Bjordal.
Thank you, thank you. I like seaweed, but I'm here to speak about something else that is almost as interesting as seaweed. So that will be fun. How do I get the presentation started? like this, perhaps? Fantastic. So I am here to talk about why environmentalists started caring about fish feed. So I'll just give you a short introduction to the Bellona Foundation, where I work as an aquaculture consultant or advisor. I have some 70 colleagues with the strong environmental expertise, thank God. I'm not alone. We have our headquarters in Oslo, but we also have offices in Brussels, Murmansk, and St. Petersburg. And the two offices in Oslo and Brussels, we are engaged with a continuous dialogue with political decision makers. We work as a solution-oriented and technology-optimistic with that approach to face environmental challenges, and we focus on collaboration across traditional disciplines, which is quite interesting because I get to work with other colleagues that work with energy or carbon capture and storage and all different things, which is quite fun as a marine biologist. We collaborate with business, academia, and institutions on different projects and initiatives, one which I will talk about today. And we really want to create significant and positive impact on the climate and the environment. And that has also led to some really cool projects, innovation projects. But enough about that. Let's talk about urgency. I feel like that is my role here today, perhaps. We have 9 very transformative years ahead of us because Norway has committed to reducing greenhouse gas emissions, like many other countries, by 50% or more the next 9 years. So we have been talking quite a lot about the green shift, as we call it, but so far we've only managed to cut our emissions by 2.3%. And that is very embarrassing because our neighbor Sweden has cut by 29%, and we don't like when Sweden is better than us. So we will need a restructuring during these 9 years. And we see that industries and stakeholders, they choose very different approaches to this challenge. We see that some are very heads-on, they want to change, they see the need to change, while others spend a lot of energy trying to convince people that they don't need to cut emissions. And we see a range of different actors acting differently. So that's interesting. But we know that there will be a higher demand for bioresources, for food, feed, carbon storage, and energy. And we know that there will be stricter requirements for companies. They need to report on not only their emissions, but the biological impacts and on land use changes. And we know that the market will need to interact with a customer group that is far more concerned about the environmental footprints of what they buy. Let's jump back into the ocean. So we have an aquaculture team in Bellona, and last year we wrote a position note document, which we call Sustainable Aquaculture 2030. And we have some focus areas that we really need to see change. It's a reduced climate footprint of the sector, and we need reduced environmental impact, and increased and more diversified production from marine resources. And there's a spoiler here, I see. Why feed? Why did we start working with feed? It's simply because for a typical Norwegian salmon, more than 75% of the emissions, the CO2 emissions for salmon, that comes from the feed. So it's very natural for us as an environmental organization to work with feed. And that is how we jumped head into what is now called the råvareløfte, which we now realize is very unhandy for an English audience. But we can translate it to feed ingredient elevation. I hope that the pictures do it more justice than the name. But this is an initiative where we will look at new feed resources for salmon. And we will look at how we can identify new potential feed ingredients and look at how they can be industrialized and scaled in Norway, preferably. And then this should lead to a better or a lower impact from the aquaculture industry. And we look at both the CO2 emissions, but also like the biological or ecosystem effects and so on when we look at these different ingredients. I'll talk more about that later. We have an interesting group of partners, I think. We are now 9 partners, where Bellona has a coordinating role, but we have the largest fish feed producers in Norway joined, and some new feed ingredient actors here, and Sjømat Norge. And we've had some very interesting discussions, and somehow we managed to find some common ground, which is good, and then we worked from there. So our approach is to, first of all, look at sustainability on new ingredients. So that's like the main core. And if we see that it has potential, we look at the scalability of the ingredients. Because if you're not able to scale it, then it's not really any use, is it? Because the aquaculture industry in Norway is huge, and you need a lot of feed to feed that salmon. And then we compile the knowledge we have and use it for communication to the stakeholders that we want to communicate to. So that is usually decision makers and politicians, or it could be others. And when we communicate with them, we also want to make sure that we have an impact. So we kind of help them with information, and we try to tell them what are the smartest things to do here, to say it simple. And we can do this through what we are working on now, which we call a barrier study, where we have a whole list of different ingredients that we look at, and we look at how developed is it within research and technology, how's the research availability, economical aspects, environmental aspects, what kind of will it be used as an oil or a protein, that kind of stuff. And we look at what barriers there are in regulatory and political environments. And we have 3 main groups here. We are just finishing up the cultured group this week, which has been very fun. I've learned a lot about grass and insects and different things. And we really see that the more we dig into these different ingredients, the more obstacles and challenges we find, which is quite interesting. And next week, we start our work on the wild harvest section. So this gathering here today was very good timed. Very well timed. I think Ingunn perhaps has some inside information on our work. So we will look on krill and calanus, and mesopelagic fish and other things. And then we will end up with the byproduct section and work with that after. So in November and December, we'll look at the wild harvest group. And that's very interesting because we are not researchers, so we need help from all you guys to find out what would be the best solutions and if these ingredients do have potential. All right. What else do we do? Well, we made a magazine this year. It was launched during Arendalsuka, for you guys who know what that is. And the purpose here was to show all decision makers and also the Norwegian public that there are a range of very exciting new initiatives in Norway, and they already exist, and they want to produce new feed ingredients. So it was all about showing that to the Norwegian authorities and telling them that you should really facilitate these initiatives. So we presented the Råvarløft in this, and then some different ingredients and actors. And we also have researchers talking about fish feed, like Karl Almos. He is also starring in this magazine. And I actually brought some copies for you guys, if you're interested. They are down there in the corner, for those who are especially interested. Yeah. I will jump over to how we work politically. From May this year, we started working strategically with 3 demands for the political parties. So the first demand we had was that they should create a state secretary committee that has wide attorneys to ensure a coordinated effort to customize laws and regulations and increase research and development activities and industry-driven innovation, and should also stimulate entrepreneurships and business development linked to these new feed ingredients. And the second one was to add considerable dedicated research funding to map possible new feed ingredients and consider the potential for scalability and sustainability gains of these ingredients. And the third was to create a specific program at the Innovation Norway with financial support for these new initiatives. And we've been really hammering that in. And it has had some effect. We've had some really nice attention, I think. We were mentioned in the government's aquaculture strategy earlier this year. They think Råvarløft is very cool. That's nice. The former fisheries and seafood minister, he also was very excited about Råvarløftet. And we also had Jonas, our now prime minister. He was also very fond of this. And he promised to put in some research funding. So that's great, great. And then last week, the new government's founding document, the Hurdal platform, they had some really promising sentences, we think, that we can work with further. The first one was to stimulate to increase sustainability through an own program for production of sustainable feed based on Norwegian resources, which we are very happy with. And the second was to set a goal that all feed for the aquaculture sector should be from sustainable sources before 2030, which we are also very happy with, even though they probably don't know, and we don't know what sustainable sources means yet, but we can work on that. They probably need some help there. So that's all I have to say. There's a lot of work to be done. That's what we see when we work with these new ingredients, that the more we dig deeper into them, the more we need to find out. We need more research and more work, and it's really quite fun. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Mari. Any questions for Bellona or Mari? Yeah, great.
Thank you, Trond Kortner, Vet School. Thanks for the presentation. I had a brief look at your magazine here, and from your presentation and from the content here, it seems like you're not mentioning seaweeds, macroalgae.
No.
Does it mean that you do not longer consider them as a promising candidate for a new feed raw material?
That's a good question, because I've seen in the media that a lot of people talk about seaweed. It could be like a new protein source that you can put into salmon feed. I think we're quite far from there yet, because the protein content in kelp is very low. So you need to refine the kelp, and you need large volumes in able to provide enough proteins for the salmon industry. But we are looking through both harvested seaweed and like wild harvested seaweed, and we'll look at farmed seaweed. So they will be considered, but we haven't concluded yet, because we're not done with those yet. But it's interesting. And Mats from Skratting, you're here. When we talk with most of the feed producers, they aren't very keen on kelp. I don't know if you share the same opinion, Mats.
Yeah, I think you covered it quite well. It's not probably the first on the list as a new.
It wouldn't be the first on the list as a new protein source. Might be some functional ingredients that you can extract from the macroalgae, but yeah, I agree with what we have said, Mari.
Yeah, I think seaweed has a very good potential as feed, but not as salmon feed as I see it in the near future. But maybe for cattle and the other ruminants, I think there's great potential.
Any other questions? Because I got one myself, and that's you obviously have an impact on politicians and people taking decisions in this country. Is it like if someone out here has something they want to like reach out to the politicians with, is there any way they can cooperate with you? Is there like somewhere you can spille dem gode, som vi sier I Trøndelag? Where can we use each other in a good way, Bellona and everyone in here?
It's just through dialogue. Just grab a hold of us and speak with us, and if we agree, then maybe we can work on it. Yeah.
Great. No more questions? Give her an applause. Great, great, great. All right. It is time to get to know some of our new partners here at SFI Harvest. These are the new partners, yes. We have 3 partners since last time. It's Newest Technology, Algen, and Nice. Only one person had the opportunity to come here today, but in return he speaks for 2 of them. So we got 2 for the price of 1. Frode Blåli, welcome up on stage. Let's make it cozy, Frode. We're going to talk to each other, me and you, so if you take this chair with you upstairs, I'll take this. It will be just like a talk show. Even more like a talk show. Frode Blåli, project manager in both Algen and Newest Technology. Could you please tell us a little about both these companies?
I will, yes. Let's start with Newest, I think. Newest Technology has developed a new technology and a process plant for extracting oil, bone, and protein from, first of all, from residuals from fish, residuals from chicken, or residuals from meat. But also we believe strongly that might be a solution for processing mesopelagic and low-trophic species, both on land but also on board processing. The plant that we have developed and the technology we got is quite space efficient. It's a low footprint on it, and we have designed it with the mindset of it could be placed on board in ships. So we believe that might contribute into the one of the challenging with processing mesopelagic species with the time. We need to do it fast, and we believe that might be one of the solutions.
How does the technology work?
It's a hydrolysis process. So we use fresh material, enzymatic hydrolysis, and the technology is based on a vertical hydrolysis column that we now have mounted into containers. We have 2 30 feet container, 2 20 feet container. That's the whole process plant is mounted in. And we now we have built a pilot plant with a capacity of 2 tons per hour, and we see that it could be scaled quite easy, a scalable process. So it'll be interesting now in the future to perhaps do some tests on, for instance, colonies, to see what we can do from it.
And where are you located in
we are located in Rissa, just across the fjord from Trondheim here, 1 hour traveling from Trondheim. And we have built the pilot plant there, and we are now going to establish the pilot plant in cooperation with a salmon slaughtery or a fish processing plant to test it out on different species, both codfish, salmon, and hopefully also some interesting new species.
Okay, that was newest technology. What about Algen? What is the main purpose of Algen?
Algen is a small ship owning company that we established last year together with Espen Nilsen, Frøya Kystfiske. We established the company to apply for a permit for a fishery of colonies. And together with Espen, we achieved 2 of the permits that the Fiskeridirektoratet let out last year. So we have done some small fishing tests this summer with no big success, but we are interested now to work on it during the winter and spring to get ready for next year.
On the screen behind us now, it says "Bruk fisken." Yeah. What's that about?
That's about we see that the reports from SINTEF instance show us that we don't use the fish. We use the half of the fish. By fillet and loins, we don't use all the ingredients that we might get out of the rest of the fish from the residuals. And we also, I think I can mention that we have built the plant for food grade use. So we both can produce marine ingredients for fish feed, but also for food. I think that's important when we are talking about new technology and new processing, that we always have in mind that we should achieve for the food grade procedures that we can have a lot more use of the fish, and also, for instance, for chicken and meat. Only 13% of the residuals from fish is used for food grade. I think it could we can use more of the fish for food grade. But of course, a combination of feed and pet food and food for people could be. I think it's important to solve one of the problems that the global problems we have with the ingredients for and proteins the next years.
You are, and correct me if I'm wrong, you are 5 to 7 people working on these 2 projects?
Yeah, from time to time, and some other projects we have.
Yeah.
So we are kind of startup companies, and we are now scaling up, and hopefully we will have now a successful test period of the next 6 months, then we can prove that we are ready for entering the market, and of course then scale up the production of several plants. And we are looking into place the process plant along the coastline, like kind of hubs. We have installed them together with some central fish processing plant, and we can collect fresh raw material from the area around. So you don't have to transport them on long distances with use of acids to stabilize it. We want the fresh material.
Okay, and here comes the big question, this critical question from this host. Why did you choose to join SFI Harvest? What's in it for you?
We want to learn more. That's important for us. We have it's 5 years ago since we established the NUAS. And we have been working together with NTNU, SINTEF, Møreforskning, Nofima, all the way from time to time. And it's important for us to have academia on board to learn more about it. And we also think that academia needs us to do things in industrial scale. It's a big difference from the laboratory into industrial scale, and perhaps our pilot plant can be a quite good solution for you to do some test of products.
Yeah, tell more about that, please, how you can contribute to the rest of the group.
Well, we have a kind of industrial mindset. We are not biological, we are not any high education degrees, either of us. But that's why one of the things that we need you. But I think also maybe you need us to have some other views on how to solve problems.
Great. What are your biggest expectations in this joining this SFI?
Regarding algae, I think we need more technology regarding harvesting and both harvesting and processing. We have done some small testing, and I know some other of you in the room have done some testing, and I don't think any of us have succeeded yet. So I think we need more knowledge about how to find the calanus and how to harvest it and how to process it. So it's a lot of learning to do there. On the newer site is also getting how can we process different kind of spaces. What kind of enzyme do we need? What is a perfect recipe to end up a good product?
You as a company, then, how do you see your future? Is it promising? Is it difficult? Is it hard to earn money? How is your future?
It's promising. We are looking quite forward to the next years, but of course it's a big investments. When we have to do things in quite a huge scale. We need a huge volume to both be, for instance, a producer for the fish feed factories. We have to be the big volume. So everything is about scale up. But we believe very strongly that we see that the need and the demand globally is big.
And if people want to contact you, want to work with you, how do they do it?
For instance, now, just speak up, or we can have a call or chat or have a meeting. Just 1 hour ride from Trondheim. That's quite good situated to have a visit to us. So please welcome.
And you have great coffee at your office?
I do.
Yeah. Any questions from you guys? Anything you wonder about with Frode and his 2 businesses, companies? No? Okay. Then over to the personal questions. Good for that.
Half hour, was it?
Great to have you on board. A round of applause for him. Yeah. We are looking at the future in Frode in some way, but we are at the same point looking at the future in our PhD candidates. The one coming up on stage now is the PhD candidate financed by SFI Harvest, and she's here to present her plans for the newly started PhD that she's doing here at SINTEF in Trondheim. It's a really challenging task she's up for. Explain your PhD in 5 minutes. Welcome, Maria Alquiza Medina. Should we sit?
Yeah.
Yeah, do the sitting part again. Welcome back to the talk show. This time with Maria. All right, Maria. What are you trying to find out in your PhD?
Well, I have 4 years to figure out that, but especially we will focus on the characterization of this fish that we don't know. So as Xavier said, there are a lot of things or basic knowledge we need to build. And my PhD will be focused on that, like getting to know more the species, and then also how to use them or process them. So that will be the second main part.
Not the easiest task you have started. Not at all. But how are you planning to find those answers within those 4 years?
Having very long days in the lab, but now we have been very lucky because we got some samples from a previous research cruise, and I was also very lucky that I could collect them. But also it's quite challenging to get these samples, so I think it was a very good start point for me in my PhD because we have just started with some analysis in the lab. So yeah, but of course the best would be if we get more fish for sure.
Yeah, and how do you get that fish? Do you go out there yourself, or is it?
Yeah, we need to go to the sea and find where the fish are. Yeah, but as I said, I think we have, or at least I had a good start point, and we'll see.
You got a kind of head start. You're only in October. You started this in August. You're having a head start now. Yeah, great. When you find some results after a few years, maybe what do you think that those results can mean for those guys here at SFI Harvest and the world, if we can draw that big line?
Yeah, I think those are like quite big words. I think the very basic thing now is to kind of create research-based knowledge. So in my case, we'll get some more information regarding the quality of these fish. So for instance, we will look for composition like proteins, lipids, which is the quality, if we can use them for food, feed. So that will be like the second step, how to use them. But at least now it will be more about getting to know the species and what we can obtain from them.
Yeah. So right now you're trying to locate stuff, and afterwards you can maybe tell us if the raw material is as good as it is in the end point from species to my plate or someone else's place.
Because I think maybe a lot of people could think that science means always like getting good results, but also a result could be that maybe this is not profitable now. Yeah. So
let's hope you get the first one, not the second. Yeah, it's a massive task you have started. As Xavier was into this darkness of the ocean in the start of and you're diving into it too. How do you like? If I was in your position and only had 4 years to do this and this massive task you have started, I would be like stressed out. How are you now? How do you feel?
Tired now.
Yeah. Already?
No, but as I said, I feel very lucky because I don't think it's common for PhDs to have like so much to do from the very beginning. But in my case, as I said, I was on board this research cruise. We got some very nice samples that we can work with them now. So, of course, we'll see how it goes for the next years, but we'll need for some more samples for sure. And that will also depend if we are able to find where the fish is. Yeah. But at least for now, I think it's very good that we have already some ongoing experiments, and we will hopefully get some results soon.
Yeah. But what is the most difficult part here? Is it finding the fish? Is it lack of technology? What do you think is the most difficult part?
I would say both the knowledge that we lack and also the fish itself, because as I said, at least from my previous experience, we were not very lucky when getting fish during this last cruise. So that's also, as they said, it's quite challenging to know where the fish are and how to get them, and also which is like the best way to process them to get as much quality as possible. So that's why I think that this is, or my PhD will be like very ground knowledge PhD, but we need to build that knowledge. So
you build the rocks that we can build a house on. Yeah. Great. That's all the questions I got for you, Maria. We only had 5 minutes, but we are running a bit ahead of schedule, so we have time for questions from the audience if you want to. Yes, Bellona.
Hello.
Hello.
I was just wondering, if you've seen already, or if you've read about or know of any like red flags already when it comes to what these species contain regarding feed or food use, like heavy metals, for instance, or those kinds of things.
I haven't gone that deep yet. We are now just focused on main fractions such as lipids or proteins, and I would say that that could be like a next step, but we haven't gone through that yet. So,
thank you. Can I ask one more question? I don't know which species you're looking at, but are there some that look more promising than others?
Yeah, so for instance, as I said, it will depend a lot of which samples we get. So for the previous cruise, we were expecting to get Maurolicus, but it was quite tricky to find those. It was funny because I heard that they were quite disappointed in Iceland, I think, because they weighed quite few tons, and I think in total I got like 30 grams or so. But we got instead some samples of Ventosema glaciale and also some krill. So we will be working on that, but for sure it will be the best if we get more samples in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone that can help Maria with some tips? She's just starting here. Maybe someone can help her with some good like do this, do that, or don't do that. Anyone? No? You gotta find out yourself, obviously. All right, a big applause for Maria.